Hi everyone, this is Barry Peng from the Barry Peng Kung Fu Schools, and I'm Anne from the Barry Peng Kung Fu Schools, and also I have my own self-defense for women and Peng self-defense as well. So we're very honored today to have Barry here with us and finding out about the development and the evolution of the various styles that Barry teaches at the Barry Peng Kung Fu Schools. So Barry, can you tell us what styles of martial arts do you teach at the school?
Well, it's quite a long journey, starting in the 60s when not much around in Melbourne, Australia, and initial training was in the hard styles of Taekwondo and Karate with the founders, and I think the only other styles that are available were Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, and Aikido was just getting to be named. So it's pretty amazing at that time that even Taekwondo wasn't known, and when I practiced the Taekwondo, the school was first named Shuto Karate Club because no one knew what Taekwondo was. Then it was later renamed Taekwondo at a later stage when people knew.
That's pretty amazing, isn't it, when you think about it, because that was really the dawn of history of martial arts in Australia, wasn't it?
Around those times, and there was, the people that are now legendary in the martial arts in Australia, Grandmaster Jack Rosinski,
lovely man.
Hanshi, Tino Ceberano,
yes.
And then amongst the
Wonderful
students that we're all
arts.
training together with were names like Bob Jones, Richard Norton.
Fearsome character.
Max Fabre, and I mean, they were beginners at that same time because there was very few schools around, and everyone congregated around the 2 or 3 major schools that taught the striking styles. Before that, Judo was popular, it was around, but as far as Karate, Taekwondo, and the striking arts, and Kung Fu was virtually unknown at that stage.
And this was in the 60s,
in
right?
the 60s.
Beginning?
Yeah, around the mid-60s, right? And then obviously the instructors came out later on. I think Hanshi Tino Ceberano came out in 1966 to start his club.
Thank goodness.
And then,
yes.
In the 70s, there was a massive influx because of the martial arts boom due to Bruce Lee, and then the styles just grew. And of course, the evolution came after that with the advent of kickboxing, Muay Thai, and then now the last phase that we're into at the moment, the UFC.
I think Bruce Lee really changed the landscape of martial arts, not just in Australia, but around the world, didn't he?
Of course. He made martial arts something that a non-martial arts person wanted to do. Right?
And understand.
That's the difference, right?
Yes.
People didn't go to see his movies and just be entertained like a Jackie Chan or maybe a Jet Li movie. When they went to see a Bruce Lee movie, when they came out of the cinema, they all wanted to be Bruce Lee, and they all wanted to practice.
Of course, didn't you, Barry?
Well,
did you want to be Bruce Lee?
Of course, and of course that's why I wanted to be part of that Chinese martial arts and Wing Chun, to learn Wing Chun, because that was the style.
Was that when you started Wing Chun?
No, it wasn't, because we were involved in the 60s in the martial arts, and even before Bruce Lee got famous throughout the world, he was already in America doing the demonstrations and those at Long Beach and so forth, at the Ed Parker
we've got those black and white videos.
And he was written up very well in the Black Belt magazine. And
all the old Chinese magazines too.
Yeah, so basically we knew about that. And from back then I wanted to practice Wing Chun because it seemed like a pretty unique style with unique philosophies. But there weren't any instructors in Melbourne. Asked around, there's a few.
So what did you do?
Well, there was. What did I train, or what did I do?
What did you do? There was no Wing Chun. How did you start training?
Well, there was a few people that were working in restaurants. They weren't martial arts instructors. They worked at Chinese restaurants, but
just
they
like in the movies.
Yeah, they practiced a bit here and there of Chinese martial arts, and some of them being Wing Chun. whenever we had a chance to meet any of those, we'd try and go there and pick their brains and learn a bit off them. But obviously there was no formal schools in Wing Chun. In fact, the two earliest schools of Wing Chun was our own school and Grandmaster William Chong's in Melbourne that started in 1974.
Okay. And what was it about Wing Chun that really impressed you? Why did you want to learn Wing Chun? Besides Bruce Lee.
Yeah, reading those articles and speaking to the Chinese community and people, even if they don't practice martial arts, they knew a little bit about it because they've watched the movies, they follow it as part of the culture. And it was unique in the way, a couple of things. One, it was invented by a woman.
Yay!
So basically, Ngui was probably the greatest martial artist ever to be born. The only woman, one of the 5 elders of Shaolin, and she was the only woman amongst those. And she invented the Wing Chun style to teach the young girl Yin Wing Chun. And the advantages of it, one was it's suitable for women and people of smaller stature. As you see in the world today and in the past history, the top Wing Chun practitioners are all very small. If you go back to the first 2 practitioners, was Ngui and Yin Wing Chun, both women. So obviously they had small stature. But come the recent generations, Grandmaster Ip Man was only 5'3" and 50 odd kilos. And of course my instructor, Wong Sun Long, at his peak fighting weight was 105 pounds. So, and obviously Bruce Lee wasn't a big fella either. He was 5'6".
Was there something about the techniques, the stances or the techniques that impressed you about Wing Chun?
Well, basically,
that made you want to learn?
When I read about it, and the article showed this unique exercise called Chi Sao, sticking hands, where the hands are in contact and you train the sensitivity in your arms so you can react from feel rather than sight. But aside from that, the thing that people don't really think about that much is that the Chi Sao techniques also enable you to redirect your opponent's strength. And in the end, if applied correctly, together with the correct footwork, pivoting and body movements, it can redirect the opponent's strength, actually use it against them so that it gets
That sounds very very fanciful, Barry. What do you mean by redirecting the strength? Can you explain a bit more?
Well,
how does that work?
If you oppose an opponent's strength, to stop that strength, you've got to be equivalent to him. But it's like the Japanese martial artists, the philosophy of Aikido was the fact that if someone dropped a stone that weighed half a kilo on your head, you could catch it, right? But if they drop one 1,000 kilos of the same size, you can't catch it.
Right.
But if they were the same size, it's just as easy to get it out of the way of either of them. And this is where the soft techniques, if you realign your body so you're out of the line of attack, you can actually redirect the force, and actually Wing Chun and other soft styles like Tai Chi, Lo Ha Ba Fa enable you to actually redirect that energy when they're in contact with your hands back towards them, and you're actually using their own strength against it.
I have actually seen you in class, Barry, doing that against quite a lot of people and very strong people as well. So when you say that you can redirect people's strength, I sort of understand a little bit, and there's a lot to do with the stance, isn't it?
Yeah, the stance is so important because this is, later on in our martial arts career, we discovered other styles that Ngui was responsible for inventing. Not only Wing Chun, her own martial arts was a style called Lungi, dragon shape Kung Fu, which she went a step further. If you understand it,
that's not very well heard of, is it? It's not very widely known.
Well, they were split because Wing Chun was the style that she taught this young girl, Yim Wing Chun, as the legend goes, right?
Hence the name Wing Chun Kung Fu.
Yeah,
right.
and basically what happened there was that she needed to teach Yim Wing Chun in a very short amount of time, a style of technique that would be suitable for her, and she had to practice it in hiding, which means she couldn't go out to a formal training area. She had to practice at home, and as well as that, because at that stage in the history, the women wore very tight outfits, right? The chipao, that type of outfit, where you can't use very wide, low stances, right? So she modified all her kung fu and invented a new style called Wing Chun. And because there was a one-to-one teaching of Yim Wing Chun, and she had to learn quickly, she did what we do, like we do on our computers now, right? If someone writes a program, all you have to do is to be able to, plug it in to someone else's computer and download
it. Right.
And her way of downloading these martial arts techniques from her reflexes was what she invented, the chi sao, which trained the sensitivity.
So she could pass it on very quickly.
Yeah, she passed it on, and it's a one-to-one training, right? Where Yim Wing Chun will work out with her, their hands are in contact, she'll teach her how to apply those forces, and it was a one-to-one, and she's learning from the best.
Right. So if that's the origin of Wing Chun, then what happened to Lungi or?
Well, what happened was, Ngui, you've got to understand, Ngui was one of the 5 elders of Shaolin, and she lived at the Shaolin temple since she was a young girl and trained throughout her whole life, which means, even when she met Yim Wing Chun...
What a beautiful story.
Even when she met Yim Wing Chun, not knowing the exact age, but if she was in her 30s or 40s, she would have had, 20 to 30 plus years of experience in martial arts. Now, to teach a young girl all that in a few months was near impossible.
Yeah,
so that's why she invented the Wing Chun technique. She couldn't pass on what she knew because it was a combination of all the Shaolin styles, which would have taken her years and years and years of training. So she summarized it and put in a few new inventions like the sticking hands for the Yim Wing Chun.
Right.
But her own training evolved her martial arts for the last 30 years and her evolution, and she trained all the different styles of Shaolin. And I'd like to add, people talk about training a lot of different styles and or being a purist. Well, most of the major martial artists we know, like Ngui, she practiced all the Shaolin styles, then she invented Wing Chun, and she invented her own style, Lung Ying, and she was acknowledged to have invented White Crane Kung Fu, which those of you who practice karate out there, Goju came from, the Sun Shin and the Tensho came from White Crane style out of Fujian, where Shojin Miyagi went and trained.
South of China.
So basically, she had practiced all those different styles, and then when we go through
as long as those styles are compatible.
Yeah, that's the main thing. They were compatible, and I was so fortunate as history went along that God sent me Wu Huotai, who was the most gifted student of the Grand Master Lam Yu Gui, who was a legend of the Lungi Kung Fu, was very, very well known in China.
So where did it originate then? Wing Chun originated in Canton, China, and Lungi originated...
Well, they went on different paths. What happened was, when the Shaolin Temple was burnt down, Ngui travelled south to try and escape China to get away from the Manchus. Her idea was to get to Hong Kong. She never ever made it there, but in her travel, she went through all those areas like Fuzhou and all that to southern China. And in that process, when she was there, she met Yim Wing Chun, and that was when she taught Yim Wing Chun. But then,
and then what happened?
Then she moved on from there. When she taught Yim Wing Chun enough to get her out of her situation, she travelled on, but she was always in hiding at the monasteries, right?
Monastery. Okay.
Yeah, but when she was teaching her kung fu in the monasteries, her top students, none of them learned Wing Chun, because that was one thing she invented for Yim Wing Chun. She taught them her evolution of the Shaolin styles, which at the time was Lung Ying, dragon shape. And basically, they went on different streams for 300 years. So that went down the line until, Dayuxi, who was a monk in the Shaolin, one of the monasteries where Lam Yugui was sent by his father to learn. And then he came down and he showed it to the world, Lungi Kung Fu. Whereas Wing Chun went a different path, as you know, with the family tree via Yim Wing Chun, her husband, and then Wang Hua Bo, Long Yi Tai, then Long Jun, Long Bick, Yip Man, Bruce Lee, to the current day.
Barry, you sound like a history book. You know all the names.
I think what happens, when we were young and studying martial arts, what you couldn't actually see at a martial arts school, you'd go to the bookstores and buy as many books and read the magazines.
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm just so intrigued to know what the differences are between Wing Chun and Lung Ying.
Okay, Lung Ying, one of the main differences with the Wing Chun and the Lung Ying is the fact that Lung Ying operates very similar to a Shaolin style with modifications that make it so much more advanced, because that was Umui's own evolution of the style. And one of the most basic things that distinguishes it, although it is similar to Wing Chun, because Wing Chun has the same, is how to get that power and using that lower body and that hip area where you push the buttocks forward and develop that potential energy from that lower leg region that connects on to the hips, right? That region where 60% of the muscle mass of your body is in that region, the upper leg, the back, and if you can be able to transfer that energy into your hand techniques. So like Bruce Lee used to say, I don't strike with my fist or my knuckle. I strike with my whole body. And if you watch even high-class boxers like Mike Tyson, how he gets so much power, it's not just the strength from his arms, it's how he can incorporate the legs, the hips, and so forth.
That reminds me of weightlifters, Barry. I've heard you say that the weightlifters can lift a lot of weight.
Yeah, weightlifters. They're able, the champion weightlifters can deadlift or squat 1,000, 1,500 pounds. Yeah. But if you ask them to just standing press it up like that, they only can do a couple of hundred, which shows that the arm is so much weaker than all those muscles in your body around the hip put together.
The leg muscles, and the hips.
So basically what we're saying is, if you get the strongest person in the world, with one arm, he might be able to have 200 pounds of force. But even an average weak person, maybe a young girl, through the hips, if she combines all those muscles together, she could probably transmit close to 600-700 pounds. Right. And obviously the strong people can generate 1,500 to a couple of thousand.
So am I understanding correctly just after listening to you that in Lung Ying there is a much greater, more sophisticated way of producing power?
Yes.
From the legs, hips,
from the legs, and one of the basic movements, what we call ngat ma, which
what does that mean? Ngat ma.
Ngat ma. Well, I mean, what's the literal translate?
Pressing
the horse. Yeah.
Pressing the horse.
And basically, it's just a really routine, serious step, but it develops the power in the legs, much like Wing Chun with the Silim Tao form, where you stay in the stationary stance for up to an hour or more. This one really allows you to develop the potential energy into from the hips, and to be able to extract it via the point of contact where you're striking, and
in different angles.
In different angles.
Whereas Wing Chun is just facing the front.
Well, basically it is.
And then
later on in turning. That's where Grandmaster Yip Man played that big emphasis on this rotating turn from our Chun.
Whereas in Lung Ying you start to do that power extraction right from the start in various angles. Yeah. That's so fascinating.
So there's two things here, right? One is developing the power so that a small person can generate a lot of power. Yeah. So by incorporating all these different muscles and not just using your arms when you're doing a punch or a blow, you can develop that power. And then as well as that, it's not a matter of strength, it's a matter of coordination. If I can use 100 muscles simultaneously when I throw a strike and you only use one, well, my muscles don't have to contribute much, each single muscle. So this is what we try to do. And what's the Kung Fu about? Getting expertise in Kung Fu? The more of those muscles you can incorporate at the same time, but they have to be in the right order. The timing has to be correct. So the amount that you're able to do,
very intricate, isn't it?
And how well you coordinate them is what you acquire in Kung Fu. That's why it takes so many years. That's why the soft styles are usually practiced slowly. Tai Chi, Loha Pa Fa. Yeah, you see the movements are done very slow. Wing Chun with the Silim Tao, it's done very slowly.
Can you just show us one Lungi technique? What is your favorite strike, say, in Wing Chun?
Well, favourite strike in Wing Chun, to me, when people ask me, your favourite strike in Wing Chun, I say to them, Wing Chun, really, if you disregard the kicks, there's only one strike. It's your basic punch.
Can you show the audience?
Which is basically along the centre line, right? The punch is along the centre line, and we hit with the bottom two knuckles instead of the top two knuckles, right? So you can actually demonstrate, I think.
Punch, right? Single punch. Okay.
Yeah, but the point is...
Not say a palm strike, a chop or anything else?
We consider it as one basic thrust.
Okay.
Because it travels along our central line, and why we do that, it enables us to block a punch at the same time.
You can use me as a dummy.
Yeah, so if you were punching at me here, right, at the same time, if I come forward, and if you look at it from the other angle, right, if we turn around here, you can see that if you're punching forward and I'm punching, sorry, it's hard to see, along the centre line, my hand will deflect hers out of the way when mine hits. So you're using the punch as a block also. So in the one movement, you are blocking and punching at the same time. But I think we've got videos to show this, and I think they'll be online there.
Yes. Okay. What about when you're training individual technique? Are there special exercises that you do to increase power? For example, say the single punch. How would you increase more power in your single punch?
Well, the main thing with us, the power, as I said, is not from your arms. It's partially from your arms. It's the last motion that adds that bit of extra power.
Right.
But we are utilising this whole midsection, the legs, the reaction from the floor. When, with your stance, if you push forward with the back leg, if you're in the front stance, you push forward, the power goes through your leg, through your hip, and each muscle that it passes adds on its share.
So when you're training a powerful punch, you actually have to train your legs.
Yeah.
And your coordination, you said before.
Yes.
Ah, okay.
And people say, but how does it get there? Because if you push from the legs, and your hand, you can throw 10 punches in the time that your leg can do the movement, right? So how is that possible, right? But we are not actually using that whole process. We're using that middle area, and how we are able to do that instantaneously to get power from that middle area into our fist is the fact that we form a rigid body. When we form a rigid body, if I have a stick here, right, whatever I hit this part with, the power will come out the other end. But if I had a piece of rubber here I hit, it will bend and it won't.
Okay.
So therefore, when I strike, right, power coming out of this part here, if the rest of my body is a rigid body when I strike, right, if it's a rigid body, right, then basically the power from here comes through my hand.
I'm not going to be your dummy anymore, Barry, I've decided. I want to be alive.
Okay, all right. But, just we'll show those techniques. I'm sure we'll have footage of those there.
All right. We might just finish with a little bit of talk about stretching.
Yeah. Well,
right.
That's your specialty. I'll let you go into that, because those of you who've seen Anne demonstrate, and you've probably got it on view now, this is how she's able to do it. I can't do it, so let her explain.
I think for every martial artist out there, it's very important that we keep our body in good condition so that we can continue training until forever, really. And in order to do that, it's important for you to stretch all your ligaments, your muscles, your joints, and keep them as healthy as possible. Because every time you stretch, you're actually increasing the flexibility or maintaining it. And also you're bringing good nutrients to these joints and muscles all the time as you stretch. So I usually go through a routine of dynamic, ballistic, and static, right? I would do the dynamic first, which is just holding your muscles in 2 or 3 seconds each time from head to toe. So I think everyone's quite familiar with that. And then I will go through static. So you're on the floor and you're stretching with various type of exercises so that you warm up all your muscles bit by bit, very carefully. And you always start slowly as well, especially if you'd like to train in the morning. Make sure that you ease into it very slowly, never ever fast. And then thirdly, we go through ballistic. Ballistic, I know that there's a lot of controversy out there about not doing ballistic because there's sudden jerky movements, but because we've already done the dynamic and we've done the static, then your muscles are a bit more warmed up for what we call the limbering up exercises. So you lift your leg up and down, and you also use your hand as a target to go out and touch your hand, and inside out and outside in as well. So I go through that routine a few times a week to keep up the flexibility. But with stretching, it is very important that you do it regularly so that your muscles don't fall asleep and not wake up, right? So you got to wake them up every now and then.
Just to give the viewers a bit of insight, and you've developed your own unique form of self-defense, Anpang self-defense course, which obviously is getting very well known now. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a bit about that and some advice for the girls out there?
Well, I think the first thing I like to say is that you don't have to be a martial artist to defend yourself, right? Because self-defense or self-protection isn't about just the martial arts techniques. A lot of it is in your own mind and just being aware of your surroundings. I know that there's an exit over there and there's a window over the other side. For me to quickly get out, if someone's going there, then I can run out that window, for example. So you're totally aware of your own surroundings. You know who you're with. You know your own alcohol limits. You know the timetable to the trams or public transport. You know where you park your car, and so on and so on. So first of all, you will not be selected as a vulnerable victim. And then secondly, if you are selected as a vulnerable victim because for some reason your body language, you're slouching a little bit, you're feeling really down and out today, you may be selected as a vulnerable victim. Then, you'll go through the testing stage. So during the testing stage, these are the sort of things you can do if you're being followed, and so on and so on. So there's a whole set of things to prepare you to equip you with the right mindset and the tools and strategies. So that is the self-defense that I've devised in 1990. So I've been teaching for about 30 odd years. There's a lot of emphasis on that, the strategies, the mindset, early prevention, setting the boundaries is especially so important because most of the, especially for females, if it's gender-based violence, then most of the perpetrators are male. And another thing I must say is it's never ever the victim or survivor's fault, right? So there's never any blame on the victim. It's always the perpetrator.
Okay, I'd just like to add self-defense for for males. I think you have to be more realistic. basically a lot of techniques that are trained in martial arts are trained towards one set of rules of your competition. And even if it's successful in competition, it may not be useful out in the street. Keep in mind that in a self-defense situation in the street, there's more situations where there's multiple assailants than a single assailant. Like gang fights are very common these days, right? The other thing is weaponry is common these days. People might draw a knife.
Oh, what's your favourite weapon?
Well,
in the street,
to me, I like to just carry a little umbrella, but I've got a special self-defense umbrella with a reinforced shaft that can't be cut through, but it's just a normal umbrella that keeps the rain out. But it's perfectly legal, and it gives me that extra reach, right? It's 90 centimetres long, so it actually gives me that extra reach which you need if you have opponents carrying knives. You don't want to get close. Once you get slashed, empty hand, you can block their blows. If you miss a little bit, it's okay. But with a knife, you get cut, that's the end of you, right? So basically...
And for women, that would be the same too, because in Australia, we can't carry guns, right?
You can't carry
no weapon
guns,
and no tasers are allowed.
You can't even carry pepper spray, right? So basically...
Not capsicum spray, but we can just carry a little salt and pepper sort of thing around the street.
So the most practical is an umbrella, which is far superior to knuckle dusters. It's longer than a knife, and a special umbrella would actually defend against a machete. It won't be able to cut through the material and the shaft. So it gives you that extra reach, right, to keep your opponent at bay. So talking about weapons, modern day, Kung Fu has a lot of different weapons, but they were the weapons of the day when the martial artists were in their heyday. Today, obviously, I'd prefer to adapt those to something that you can carry around for self-defense. And remember too, it's a lot different in self-defense if you've got multiple opponents, and also the idea of BJJ UFC tournaments where you end up with your opponent on the ground. If you've got multiple opponents, it's not really the place to be on the ground. You've got to stay on your feet. So there are differences between training martial arts in a sporting area and in self-defense, and we need to consider it, and we need to consider the modern day with the modern weapons as well, which is obviously different to the time pre guns and weapons like that. So basically martial arts is helpful in your defense. I think the biggest thing it gives you is the confidence, right? But it's not magic, right? If someone draws a gun on you, and we see so many defenses against guns, I would back the guy with the gun any time.
Yes, and we'll probably finish on the word of confidence, Barry. I think confidence takes us a long way in whatever we do. We can eat and drink confidence all day, because that will make us feel so much better, especially in this current pandemic. I think we really need to keep our mind healthy, and of course our body as well. And I think martial arts does precisely that. So we'll probably finish on that. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening and joining in. And we hope that you stay healthy and safe. Thank you.
Thank you.